I'm so happy to be here. Thank you, Girls Right Now, for having me. Um, so I'm going to start off by just sort of talking about my writing journey, how I got here. Um, and because Girls Right Now focuses on high school age and young people, I decided to start there. So I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, in the neighborhoods of Bed-Stuy and Fort Greene, Big Up. Um, and I lived there most of my life until I went off to graduate school in 2003. I went to UMass Amherst. But going back to Brooklyn, I grew up in a large family. I'm one of seven. My mom is also one of seven. And for me, my family is very much an important part of my writing process. They are sort of my alphabet. They are memory banks. They are just sources of stories and information. I pretty much like use my autobiography as an anchor to sort of do the risky work creatively, to take my work in strange and interesting directions because I'm rooted in the personal. I'm rooted in the concrete details of my life. Um, and so just kind of being in this large family, large Black family, beautifully loud, creative. Um, I think about holidays where we would play spades and just, all of the kind of shit talking that would happen and all of the kind of like like the way in which we would brag and pump ourselves up. And I hear those voices when I write. And it wasn't until I was like in sixth grade. So I went to PS 21 in Bed-Stuy, and I had a teacher, Miss Williams, who just made writing and reading so much fun. We would get prizes if we read a certain amount of books. But one of the things I loved the most was that each week we would have vocabulary lists. And with these vocabulary lists, we were sort of charged with like writing stories. And since I so much loved A Different World, and I'm wearing my like Lisa Bonet shirt right now. I loved A Different World so much that every time we had these vocabulary lists, I would just like write a new scene or some kind of new drama that would happen, between who knows. So I loved writing and recreating, and that really took shape when I was in sixth grade. And then off to high school. It's strange how I ended up at the High School of Economics and Finance, right down in the heart of Wall Street. I actually wanted to go to Edward R. Murrow and study journalism, but I didn't get in. And so at the time, New York City was starting they weren't charter schools, they were New York City public schools, but they were in collaboration with different organizations or universities. So the High School of Economics and Finance, our board members were on Citicorp, Travelers, Merrill Lynch. We had internships down at Wall Street. I did an internship at Citicorp. And at one point, I wound up saying to the internship coordinator, I was like, where are the nonprofit art organizations? Those are also business models. And so from there, I was able to get this amazing internship at Alvin Ailey. I was just sort of there kind of shadowing the general manager, learning how he managed shows, put on shows, especially during their city center season that happens like in December. So there, dance became a huge part of my life in terms of like arts administration, because that is what I would continue to do when I was out of school. It was basically like arts administration was how I put food on my plate because I wasn't necessarily making money from poetry. So in high school, I wound up winning a poetry contest for, it was like Women's History Month. And I was just excited by this idea that a poem I wrote that was, I felt like very political, very feminist, won something. And I just remember going to the ceremony with my English teacher, Nila Grutman, who I'm still in touch with today, and just feeling so accomplished. Neela was also the person who just supported my writing in all sorts of ways. She eventually told me that I should go to Sarah Lawrence for creative writing. And I didn't know that you can go to college for something like that. So I totally followed her word. I applied, I got into Sarah Lawrence. I loved Sarah Lawrence. It was a liberal arts education, small classes. We wrote everything. Like we had these conference papers that were like 30 pages long, just this intense study of a subject that would happen. So at Sarah Lawrence, I fell in love with Toni Morrison, Black feminist thought. I read as much literature by Black women as possible. And so after I graduated from Sarah Lawrence, it was in May 2001. And then in September, 9/11 happened. And so, I wasn't sure what I was going to do after my undergrad degree. But after 9/11 and the Twin Towers were gone, I'm a tall woman. I'm 5'11". I feel like I've been 5'11" since I was 5 years old. And I was always the tall girl in class. And whenever we would line up, I was the last one. And I always made best friends with the girl who was right in front of me. And eventually we would be called like the Twin Towers, like in elementary school, junior high, or high school. It was always me called the Twin Towers with another tall girl. And so to have like the New York City skyline just transform. There's no longer any Twin Towers. So no one would ever call anyone the Twin Towers again. So that memory was sort of lost. And there was just all of this grief, but in that particular time for myself, something clarified where I was like, poetry has to be a part of my life always. And so I think I did a Google search. I came across Cave Canem. They were offering poetry writing workshops at Poet's House at the time. And Cave Canem is an organization for poets of the African diaspora. They have regional workshops and they also have a summer retreat. I eventually did that summer retreat. But the thing is that after 9/11 and then going into Cave Canem, I just became a part of this community of Black poets that have nurtured me during some crazy, tough times, and especially times when I wasn't sure if this is what I want to do. But I always had these models of like Black poets to show me that it's possible. And then eventually I went off to graduate school at UMass Amherst, where I got a full ride scholarship, which was amazing. It's a 3-year program. And the great thing about my timing was that I had Cave Canem on sort of one side, and then I had my graduate school education on the other side. And so the two were sort of complementing each other. And often one of the things that is kind of troubling about MFA workshop environments, especially for folks of color, is that you don't really feel supported around, writing the material that is culturally rooted. You often feel like you have to explain or you have to take things out. But because I had Cave Canem, this space that culturally matched up with me, I was able to grow in both of those spaces and to have my voice nurtured in a way that didn't take away from me nor whiten my voice for a larger audience. So when I graduated from UMass, I also graduated from Cave Canem. And then I moved out to the Bay Area. I always wanted to live in California. So I moved out to the San Francisco Bay Area. And I intentionally decided not to do a PhD program. I was like, I'm going to get my doctorate on the streets. I'm going to be a poet for the people. And I really like this idea was just sort of based on the recognition that my poems grew when I was out in the world, sort of pushing up against things, when I had to shake off the stories that were told about me, when I had to push up against certain ideas I had about myself. Um, and when all of those, like that kind of tension creates these moments where interesting things happen, just sort of either spiritually, intellectually, or creatively. You just begin to learn more truthfully who you are without the structure of the institution guiding you and rewarding you. So what I got to do by not, choosing to sort of be like the poet of the people is that I got to learn how to balance my life as a poet and sort of think about what kind of work am I going to do that will sort of support or complement my creative self. And so once again, that dance love of myself came back in. So I was like working for dance organizations out in the Bay Area, but it was also the time of the Great Recession. So then I got fired. Like everyone was like getting fired. People were losing their jobs, mortgages were all over the place. And it was like it was a crazy time because not only did I get fired, then I had to go on unemployment, then I had to go on public assistance. And then I was like, oh my God, why didn't I become a doctor or a lawyer? Or something, or a plumber. I was really thinking, why didn't I become a plumber? You know? So but I just persevered. I once again went back, found support within the network of poets that I built up from going to conferences and retreats and residencies and all of the sort. And then also at that time, my graduate professor, Dara Wire, she published my first chapbook, and that just gave me a sense of hope. Like I can keep on doing this. So one of the things that was really exciting about living in the San Francisco Bay Area is that there were so many grants, or I thought was so many grants for like individual artists. There were state and local grants to sort of put on cultural funding, all of these really interesting things. So I started to pay attention to the grants that were being offered and opportunities to incubate different kinds of projects I had. And so with that in mind, what I wound up doing was that my poetry started to expand, like it started to move off of the page and become more public facing. So a chapbook that I wrote that was published in 2011, which was called Postpartum, and it was based on a murder suicide. The poet Ritika Visrani, particularly, she killed her 2-year-old son and then herself. And I actually met them 1 year at Cave Canem. So I was just like, oh my God, like they were there and now they're gone. And then my response to that was write poems. When I was writing those poems, I knew that the work wasn't sort of keening, like I needed it to be like more emotional and louder. And so I applied for a grant and I wind up adapting that chapbook into a libretto, into an opera. I worked with a composer. So these grants gave me these opportunities to collaborate and see what a poem can do and what a poem can be. And also I found ways to bring the poetry to people who wouldn't necessarily like pick up a book of poems, right? But they would pick up a book of poems if they went to this opera, And so I did stuff like that, which then leads me to Who's Your Daddy? Because I applied to a grant from the Center for Cultural Innovation in Los Angeles. This was a big grant. It was $10,000. And with this grant, I proposed self-publishing a collection of epistolary poems that were addressed to my father, Gerald. And epistolary poems are essentially like poems written as letters. So when I turned 33, my Jesus year, my mom asked me if I wanted to write my father in Guyana. And I was like, I don't know. Like, who's this man? Like, what do I say to him? And so, you know, being the poet that I am, I just figured out my language and what I wanted to express by writing poems after poems after poems. And so when I proposed this project, I wanted to take those epistolary poems, make a chapbook of my own. I also wanted to host these community-based writing workshops for other people to write letters to their absent, estranged, distant, dead fathers, and even patriarchal figures. Um, Trump was running for the first time. So we were, you know, we were in election season. So everyone was all like, we have to write letters to Trump, or we have to talk to the man. So it was just like these community workshops came at a right time. And so folks who participated in these community workshops, they could give me their letter in exchange for the chapbook that I created. And so I got about like 18 letters. Some letters came from participants in the workshop. Some letters came through a call for submissions. I actually got a few letters from inmates in San Quentin, and we wrote back a few times. I also got a letter, as you know, that came from the Philippines. So I was really excited by this kind of the international reach of the project. And the last component of the grant was to go to Guyana, meet my father, give him this like chapbook of poems that I created, and to just sort of meet him, visit the country, see where he grew up. And I did all of this in 2015. And I kept a journal during that time. I've been keeping journals since I was 12 years old. So I have like nearly over 100 journals, which I return to often when I'm writing essays, when I'm working on a memoir like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read a few sections from Who's Your Daddy? One of the sections is actually a kind of collage. It's a collage piece. So from some of the letters, I wind up creating these characters who became my friends. And so I wind up taking from the letters and creating dialogue in one of the poems that I'm going to read. And I'm reading from the first section of Who's Your Daddy? It's broken up into 4. And the first section it pretty much establishes me as a child growing up without a father, but with much father presence. And so this opening section is this way of looking at my father's absence, but also noticing places where people are stepping in and being a father presence for me. Okay, so I'm gonna read 3 sections. First one is, I don't remember this. I don't remember this, but my mother says I bumped into Gerald on Nostrand Avenue. I am soon to graduate elementary school. My memory, musk and incense. The weather, kerchiefs flagging in pockets, antennae clearing waves. She says, this happened, but what I hear, Gerald's unhello moving southbound with traffic, where he stood, concrete and haunt of curry, knockoff handbags, bootleg videos, not a beard or brow, style of shirt, he could be anybody. So this is the piece that takes from the different letters and poems that I received from folks. This is called Friends Never Really Ask About Fathers. Friends never really ask about fathers. To ask is to sometimes signal a personal failure. But when we feel triumphant from figuring out how to play handball with all three of us, it comes up. Nicole, with her round cheeks, dimples dipping into them, undoes and then meticulously fastens the Velcro straps on her Reebok Classics. I often wonder, I wonder I wonder most. I become a homing signal, an umbilical cord. My father, a rum zero, will never add my expectations, my deepest needs, in the years divide us. She pauses and turns and looks at me and Sophia, our backs against the handball wall. I'm watching for that ultramarine sky that marks when I need to be home. Nicole's eyes are asking, is my father some kind of dream reeking of crazy and old spice, simply a distance in everything? Maybe we nod. We nod soft so she knows it's not her fault he never came back home from the liquor store. Sophia, whose father lives with his other family in Harlem, rolls her eyes, neck, sucks her teeth, inspects her hot pink polish, bites off a hangnail, then spits. He's nothing but a warm brown set of limbs, never thinking, never knowing, the appropriate measuring tool to sift his love from them to me. They clock me for my story with a silent impatience of 13-year-olds feeling fresh from sharing, and the sky is telling me to go. I rise up, dust the street off, and the blood flows to the pens and needles. What? I never had a father. I figured you might know. We laugh something purple from our throats. It rushes forward with many rivers, freely and deep, muddy and ready for the open. And so I'm going to read the closing piece for section 1. And this piece takes on some sort of kind of magical elements in the way that the voice is moving through time and space and sort of reconfigures herself to be able to do so. This is called I Leave Girlhood. I leave girlhood and enter my own private world. It is 8th grade. Pleased my white denim Gap jeans went unstained. I put my sweater on, cross into new territory. No decipherable shift, sniff, sniff, 10 fingers and toes, crackle in my ankle remains, and now I'm fresh dirt, for which I take for my own making into a woman whose shoulders cup over her heart, head bowed, convex, my cramps turn me. Smoldering fire churns my uterus, perineum, stomach to switchblades and Chinese stars. It takes my metal to breathe, stand up, sip, because waves of pain tsunamic. Advil, Aleve, codeine, Vicodin, oxycodone are prescriptions to drown. In tears, passed out on stairs, moaning fetal in my bed because it occurred monthly, my family disables their care. My anger toward them, a sail. I get into a raft away from where it hurts most, a black sand island covered by mist that thins and thickens from cant to cant. No one sees me from the distances taken from female troubles, her time of the month. Left on my own nausea, mouth watering itself, and out it gushes. I dry heave myself to soar. On a scale of 1 to 10, the pain of my wandering womb is blue-violet. This does not compare to the blue-black of Africans, according to my mother. Her period was never this bad. My blood forges through walls, seeps out a quarry of pomegranate, heated and fine, setting things apart with its edges. When I'm this kind of lunatic, my endometriosis casting me in its spell, I must stay away from the water. A whispered command of come to me makes the Hudson River the boats. Spawns joy so spontaneous, a girl takes off her shoes, rolls up her pants, jumps into a university fountain, turns water conga her body wet, sings the moon into her mouth, then kisses me, wane to full at my dorm door. I don't need to abandon my body to feeling unloved. I find antonyms in past verbs. I fall leagues for a girl whose long red lava she ties into a bun, rubs a balm of raspberry leaf, cramp bark, motherwort, and her honest heat onto my belly, lower back, ankles. I cry. Pain bristles across soft cover spines, throbs toward the languid mist outside my windows, where she secretly watches me when I'm writing, then tiptoes through my apartment, bringing New England brisk, granny tonics, and pirated DVDs. Every month she calls in sick, when pain notates power lines, warble an even song through horse tails to a brand new honeymoon. She holds my pain like a newborn beast in her hands and coos it down. I'm gonna take a drink of water. So now I want us to begin thinking about your own absences. So you all have your water. I'm gonna put this on gallery view so I can just see you, just either like wave your hand. So you all have your water. You have looked up the definitions of your names, and you have identified where does the light come in the space that you're inhabiting right now, right? So we have all of those things. All right, so what I want you to do is, I want you to face the part of your room, whatever space you're in, I want you to face where that light is coming in. You may need to sort of like unhook from the computer a little bit, maybe unplug me because I'm gonna keep on talking. So now that you're facing that, I just want you to close your eyes and just imagine that light on you, feel that light on you. And in this moment, you could be standing or you can be sitting, but I want you to do a body check. Starting from your toes all the way up to the top of your head, to your crown. So I want you to just give like a hello touch to your feet. Say hello. To your ankles, to your calves. Give some hello love to your knees. Just rub those a little bit. Give a hello to your thighs. Give a hello to your hips. Give some love to your butt too. Give some love to your belly. Just rub on your belly, your heart. Say hello to your throat. Say hello to the top of your head. And then make your way back down again, saying hello. And so for our time together, I just created a welcome mantra that I will say to you, and you can listen and allow yourself to be welcomed in. Let us arrive in this moment, which is you, and take a breath on that. Let us arrive in this place, which is you, and breathe. Let us arrive in this space, which is all of you. Breathe. You are well. You are well. You are well. Come. You are a well. Take a drink. You are well. You are well. Come. And take another drink. All right. So now feeling that light on your face, both literally or figuratively, feeling the water hydrating you in this moment, feeling your body sort of energized by your own hello touch. I want you to bring attention to someone whose absence has affected you. I will be referring to this throughout our time this evening as your absence. So I want you to bring attention to someone whose absence has affected you. Where do you feel it in your body? Where do you feel this absence in your body? Bring your hands to that part of your body and just breathe into it, and then exhale, making a hum. So touch that part of your body where you feel the absence. Breathe into it, exhale, and make a hum, a humming sound. And I'm just gonna let you stay in that for a moment. Now, in your notebooks or on your computer, whatever you're using to write with, I want you to write down the part of your body. And then I want you to describe the feeling as a series of colors and objects. So write down the part of your body. Describe the feeling as a series of colors and objects. And I'll give you 2 minutes for that. Sorry, I'll give you a minute. You have 10 seconds. Begin wrapping up your images, your colors, your objects. Now, the next thing I want you to do is I want you to ask your absence a question and write that question down. Ask your absence a question and write that question down. I'll give you a minute for that. Begin wrapping up your question. Okay. So the next part of this. So now you have your absence in consciousness. And I want you to hold that absence in consciousness as I ask you to pay attention to different parts of your body. And I want you to creatively respond to the questions that I'm going to pose. I want you to kind of sort of sink into your senses, let your language be rich with the senses. And I like to think of 6 senses, not just the 5. Sight, touch, smell, taste, sound, and also spirit and intuition. That's sort of like gut thing, that the little spidey sense that happens as well. So I want you to kind of tap into those senses. The questions that I'm asking you may come off as odd, and that is the point. I want you to use the questions as a guide, as a way to get into your memories and the images that arise in your mind's eye and the sensations, right? I want you to use the questions to just agitate some things, to arrive at a moment that you may not have thought you remembered, or may not even thought you had the intention of going there. But pay attention to the images, pay attention to your sensations, and use that, right? Don't try to answer the question directly. I want you to answer the question more so creatively, like from your gut. Okay, so I will give you about, I'll give you 2 minutes to just sort of, I'll bring your attention to a part of your body, and then I'll give you like about 90 seconds to respond. So go with your first thoughts, your first images. So I want you to bring attention to your back. Wiggle your shoulders, maybe touch your lower back if it's feeling sore. Mine is. I spend too much time sitting. But just bring your attention to your spine. Maybe sit up straight. Feel the length of it. Breathe into it. But just bring your sense to like you're looking through your shoulder blades or something. So now that your attention is on your back, my question for you is this: who do you transform into? And I want you to use the meanings of your names as inspiration for this response. Bringing attention to your back, who do you transform into? Begin. Go with those first sensations, the first whatever, and see where it takes you. You have 20 seconds. Begin wrapping up your images, your thoughts. Question number 2. I want you to bring attention to your left arm, to the left side of your body. Maybe give it a hello touch. Maybe wiggle it around. So your attention is on the left side of your body. And now I want you to consider this question. When did they learn freedom? When did they learn freedom? Begin. Thinking of this absence, when did they learn freedom? You have 20 seconds. Begin wrapping up your thought. Question number 3. Bring your attention to your right arm, to the right side of your body. Maybe give it a wiggle, wiggle your leg. And I want you to consider the question, how did they feed you? How did they feed you? Begin. You have 20 seconds. Begin wrapping up your thought. The fourth question, bring attention to your feet. If you can put your feet on the ground, recollect all of the places your feet have gone, where they have traveled, where they have stood, how you have stood up on them. And I want you to consider the question, where are you rooted? Where are you rooted? Begin. You have 20 seconds. Begin wrapping up your thought, your images. And the last question number 5. Bring your attention to your heart, to your center. Feel that heart beating for you. Just take a moment just to listen to your own heartbeat. Feel your own heartbeat. And I want you to consider the question, what taste is their love? What taste is their love? Begin. You have 20 seconds. Begin wrapping up your thought. So now you've generated material that you're now going to synthesize in the following prompts. So hopefully you've numbered your questions and things of the sort, because I'm gonna, with the next, Andrea, can you pull up the next slide for prompt 2 or prompt 1? Okay, so what I want you to do, and you're gonna have 7 minutes to just begin some synthesizing. So here are your guidelines. I want you to use your responses from questions 3 or 5. I want you to take the colors and objects associated with the feeling of your absence, and I want you to use your responses to questions 4 or 5 to locate a memory, right? So you're going to use those colors, your responses, and then you're going to try to locate a memory that brings up that color, brings up whatever. And when you start writing about that memory, I want you to start by describing the colors that you see. I want you to give us the sort of who, what, where, and when of the memory. Try to get those details out and pay attention to the sound that this memory is recalling for you. And like, are there any questions? Okay, so let's begin writing.
Please, teacher, tell me why, yeah. Why are there boundaries? So please, oh, please, teacher, tell me why, yeah. Why are there boundaries? Ask my dad, but he couldn't tell me. Ask my mom, but she couldn't tell me, no. So please, teacher, explain to me. So please, oh, please, teacher, tell me why. Why are there boundaries? So please, oh, please, teacher, tell me why. Why are there boundaries? I asked my neighbor, but he couldn't tell me. I asked my grandma, but she couldn't tell me, no. So please, teacher, explain to me. Why are there boundaries? give it up now somehow. But I'll never, never, never stop thinking of you. Never, never in the right place for us to stand by each other. You have to replace. We first a goodbye and find another. My heart was like a stone when we stopped in pain. I felt like a clone, cold blood in my veins. Forgive my silence, this absence of time. Crime of distance, deception was prime. I keep a secret, a great adventure. The kind of regret could it have been future? Now going ahead, my hands play a touch. I'm taking this new gate. You bring me so much. Better give it up now somehow. But I'll never, never, never stop thinking of you. I better give it up now somehow. But I'll never, never stop thinking of you.
How was that? Just like quickly in the chat, like how was that for folks? All right, so we're gonna move on to prompt 2, memory 2. Nice. Doing a deep dive, yes. Yes, Julie, you were brought to some surprising places. I love that. Yeah, Adrian, not what you expected. Yeah, good. I like those responses. Okay, so now you're gonna work with a different memory. So you're gonna use your responses from questions 2 or 4 and question 1. Use your responses to questions 2 or 4 to help you locate a memory. As you write about this memory, begin with touch, texture. In this memory, allow yourself to be transformed. So go back to your name, how you responded to question 1, because your transformation powers is rooted and embedded in the name that you were given. So you have 7 minutes to work on this one.
I never thought it'd be this. I'm jumping out of your arms. I land and fall in a pit. Is this what they call the abyss? I fought and clawed for an inch, turning a miracle mile. I could recall when your lips used to contort into smiles. Bright as the sun, it's drawn in eclipse. I haven't seen light in a while. Hasn't been bright in a while. Wrist. Even days you mad at me. You're the one giving clarity. investment to your character. On your birthday, you told me to donate money to charity. You have made it sincerity. Ain't got K like Saturday. You tether me when my stress start bearing me. You're the one to take care of me. I'm so gone at conclusion, foregone that confuse you. Where your war zone is store long. I'm ready to go home. I'm ready for your bag. Can you comb my hair out so don't dread? I just want my hair rub. I don't want to mixtape. I just want the best of. I just want to get grub from my spot again. But do the odds work in our favor? Stay down, skate town, head low and face down like a kennel greyhound. Doing God's work in the devil's playground. Risk, I never thought it'd be this. I'm jumping out of your arms. I land and fall in the pit. Is this what they call the abyss? I fought and clawed for an inch, turning a miracle mile. I could recall when your lips used to contort into smiles, bright as the sun that's drawn in eclipse. I haven't seen light in a while, hasn't been bright in a while. Risk. Pick up on my calls, I've been going through withdrawals, trying to take the edge off. I need Novocaine. I've been trying to stand tall. I hope that you stand with me. You know all the greats fall. Shit is all the same. Hot as napalm. Next day, kinda rain. Gotta stay calm. Press play, put my heart in all of these songs. Display all of these wrongs. Yeah, part of me is gone. And you are a gift in itself, a measure of wealth, the meaning is selfless. I place you over the shelf and hide in pedestals over the belt, the straddle the waist on, Orion's constellation, observation of you. Here come the truth, I'm most overdue. Stuck over you, I've gone under. Living proof of God's wonders. Risk, I never thought it'd be this. I'm jumping out of your arms. I land and fall in the pit. Is this what they call the abyss? I fought and clawed for an inch, turning a miracle mile. I could recall when your lips used to contort into smiles, bright as the sun that's drawn in eclipse. I haven't seen light in a while, hasn't been bright in a while.
Roses around our bed waiting for you. 100 roses around our bed for you. Petals are falling, the wind is blowing through the yellow cloth. Crying and laughing, you are making us closer. 100 roses around our bed. 100 roses around our bed. 100 roses around our bed waiting for you. 100 roses around our bed for you. Spirit is out of your body. Are you watching us? Talking to you every evening to know what's on your mind.
Okay, shake out your hands. All right, so one of the things I want you to do before we open up to Q&A, and this could also be a part of the Q&A, it's just a moment of reflecting. So you posed a question to your absence in the beginning of our generation. So now I want you to go back to that question And I want that question to kind of now help you decide, like, one, recognize like how do the pieces you've written, how are they a response to this question? Sort of notice how you responded. Is it sort of direct? Is it slant? Does it go in another direction that opens up the possibility for another question to be posed? I also want you to just look over what you've written um, with that question in mind, and notice the patterns in your writing. Are you noticing interesting patterns? Even something that you may think is a mistake now may actually be a creative thing later. So if you find that you're like beginning, your sentences all like starting with conjunctions, right? Like but, that maybe it's your mind and your subconscious is telling you that there's something there to play with. The idea that you begin with a thing that is supposed to join another thing. I also want you to notice any images that feel really charged. They're really resonating. Any words? Is there sentence structure that's sort of standing out in a really curious or interesting way that you feel like you can play with? Are there certain rhythms that are coming up? So what I noticed when I was, writing Who's Your Daddy, I was bringing more of that kind of Creole cadence into my work. I felt like I had that permission to do so. So I, heard my stepfather, I heard my mom and her Rastafarian friends. So I began to use that Creole syntax and cadence in the work, and just amped it up. And then I want you to, in looking at these pieces you've generated, are there places that you can expand upon? Like do you have like a new idea for a new piece? And then also, what are some new questions that are coming up? So the best part, I think, about, writing for me is coming up with more questions to like keep me moving, to keep me on the quest. So yeah, just notice those things, because those things you can take advantage of and further develop and begin to sort of create these motifs, either structurally or imagistically, or in terms of organization, what have you. So yeah, I would love like for us to, if you want to ask me some questions, I love answering questions.
Jayola, you have your hand up?
Oh my God, there's people I know. Sorry. I just went to gallery view and then I'm like, oh, Daryl, I haven't seen you in forever. Marcia, MK, Dare. That's great.
Hi, my name is Jayola, and this workshop was really, really good. I found that I've tried to write, I guess, like about this particular person who's been absent in my life, but every time I do write it, it usually tends to lead to like, some type of like emotional breakdown, and I can't physically continue writing because it's such sensitive like subject and topic. And then on top of that, because of the fact that they were absent, it was a lot of like missing pieces that I feel like I didn't necessarily remember or have a lot of memories to write about. So I constantly find myself like not being able to finish what I started. And I was just wondering, I feel like this was a really unique approach to go about writing this, because this is more than I've gotten done about this particular topic than any time I've ever tried before. And it was through questions that I would not think to ask myself at all, especially like with the whole like back thing and then the arm, like I just would have never thought of that. So I was just wondering, how do you like, I guess like, just like, how do you come up with like these certain, like things to look at that one normally wouldn't think about to write something like this?
It's like a few things. I'm asking questions, like, so I jot down a bunch of questions. And then I also read, sometimes when I find myself stuck in a similar place that you've been in, it's like too emotional. I'm too focused on what's not there that I'm not paying attention to what is there. So I often read like theory. Just like I go to this like abstract kind of theoretical place because theory offers me this framework in which I can sort of shift my thinking or, shift my lens. I can angle differently. So that helps me. Also TV helps too. And one of the one of the ways, because as at Sarah Lawrence, I studied camera movement. And one of the things I love about camera movement is that it's showing you where you can position your eye, right? It's like it's guiding how you look, where you gaze. So put yourself in strange positions, like go stand in the corner in your room and scrunch down and eat a cookie and see what happens. So I think like these moments of just sort of like defamiliarization just helps. Um, there are times when I'm like watching something on television, there'll be like someone will pose a question or there'll be some funny dialogue and I'll just write it down and see where I can find that in my life and pull that up. And the other thing is, if it's too emotional, you just need to give yourself space to cry and shout and yell and let the emotions run their course. So right now you need to be in that emotional space. And I think what you can do is begin to move through different emotions and move in combination with those emotions too. So if you have some anger going on, put some happiness next to it and see what happens. If you have some confusion, put some love next to it and see what happens, so that you are breaking yourself out of sinking into the kind of pool that you can drown in, that when you're in these like shadowy, dark emotions. So give yourself the space to feel, find some different frameworks, go out in the world, maybe like look at a link fence and see if that structure gives you an idea for how to write about something. Because when you're dealing with absence, you need to find presence, right? You can't keep on looking for the void. You have to look for the ways in which your life has been populated with, and in my case, populated with the Father presence. So my brothers, my uncles, my stepdad, right? Great like male figures in my life, right? So when I look there, I feel abundant. But when I look like in that void of my father, I feel everything negative and bad about me, and it just doesn't work. So you have to shift a little bit. You have to find the abundance. You have to find the presence.
Thank you so much. That was really helpful. Thank
You're
you.
welcome. Thank you.
There's a question in the chat from Mars SD asking, how did you develop your reading voice slash cadence?
Okay, so I took a course with Tracy Morris at Sarah Lawrence called Performance Poetry, and one of the things we had to do, like she brought a mic in the class and we just practiced reading our poems, without a mic, at learning to like adjust the mic, position the mic, right? And then just moving through and out of that weird poetry voice that, that poetry voice I'm talking about. It's like everyone goes up at the mic and it's just like all of a sudden their voice goes away and it falls into the poet voice cadence. So so I think that kind of practice helped me just be comfortable with my own voice and my own breath. I also took drama classes, spent a lot of time just kind of in theaters with dancers and then that performative space. So I think a combination of those things, allow me to feel comfortable at the mic. And then also, being a part of a big family, you have to have your oratory skills. You have to have your storytelling skills. So if you're going to say something, say it well and get people's attention and make sure you're present behind it because it's your story. Be there. So I think a few of those things kind of helped me develop that voice.
Any more questions? We probably have time for like one more question before we wrap up. And then you'll be able to ask Arisa a question again. I'd love to add that in there for the pressure.
How was the process for folks in terms of like your like reflecting on your question and seeing the pieces you wrote? I'm just curious how that question aligned or didn't align with what you've written.
Ozma asks, do you find it useful to read other people's poetry to inspire your own?
Yes, I do. Often I'll have like a kind of collection of books that are either like a resource in terms of like content, in terms of research, right? So I'll have books like that, but then I'll also have books that are modeling what I want to do on the page. So at that time, while writing Who's Your Daddy, I was reading In the Wake by Christina Sharp, Zong by Nora B.C. Phillip. I was also reading a collection of creative nonfiction by Piper Daniels. I was also reading the unpublished manuscript of Emerson Whitney's Heaven. And I'm sort of mentioning these texts because they do this sort of hybrid stuff. Like there's citations, there's quotations, there's this lyrical rendering of the language. Another book that was really helpful for me in its sort of boldness and its sort of absurd kind of nature was Yuta One by Jennifer Tamayo. So I was like really reading a lot of books that employed documentary poetics, some kind of using different registers of voice, using found material, using citations, and like really bringing all of this together. So yeah, it's really helpful because those books give me permission in all sorts of ways. And then I just have to be the nexus of all of this great stuff and figure out how I'm going to synthesize it to make my brilliance on the page.
One last question that you feel captures all the amazing things that were written here tonight.
The question about, do you ever imagine you're absent reading, reacting to your writing? I find that this thought holds me back. I get this question a lot. And this is when you have to give yourself permission. You really have to say, this is my story. These are my memories. And I'm gonna work these memories like a painter works paint. So you really, it's like this way where you have to like encourage and embolden yourself to just like honestly take your truth and go with it in all sorts of ways. It is yours. You can play with it. You can make it up. You can tear it to pieces. And I feel like once you get to that place, it is so empowering because because the thing is like, you know, being from a large family, like, you know, one of seven, I'll have a memory. I'm like, we did this. And then my older brother is like, no. And then my younger sibling is like, no, we actually did that. And this is when I realized that we all have our own point of view. And then another thing that I learned was in therapy. So I was like having a very difficult moment and I was just going on and on. I'm like, I'm blaming everybody for this and that girlfriend and my father's not there and my mom, I'm like, whatever, I'm going on and on until, you know, I'm wasting my money in that session, just whatever. And so my therapist says to me, he's like, Arisa, stop, you're projecting. Like, you're projecting all of your stuff on these people. Like it has nothing to do with them. He's like, that's not useful for intimate dynamics. And then I asked myself, I'm like, then what is it useful for? Oh, my creative writing. So do know that you are projecting your creativity on the page. the same way that we project our feelings, our unconscious onto other people, you're doing a similar work. But I think but when you do that work, you get to analyze it and revise it and edit it and make it into art in a way that you can't necessarily do with people. So own your story, own it, own it. It is your material to pull and stretch and self scrutinize and to go deeper and to heal and to become like an amazing, beautiful person. It's yours.
I think that's such a beautiful way to wrap up. And now we all know that we can project onto the paper and not onto people. Just like put that on a shirt, put that everywhere. That's really amazing. If we could all just unmute ourselves, like really connect with the sound of just cheering for Arisa and this beautiful, beautiful salon. I'll start and I'll model, but I just want to say like, I need to clap and woo. There's just so much shared. This is like such a generous offering from you, Arisa, and to see everyone's engaged faces and to see the writing in the chat is just really wonderful. So everyone who's here who doesn't already follow Arisa on Instagram, on Twitter, and of course you can purchase Who's Your Daddy. I believe that link should be in the chat. There you go. Tatiana has dropped it for you in the chat. So please go and purchase. Those three readings that we heard today are just like already so exciting. And I know there's so much more to dive into in the book. So please go get a copy. Thank you, Arisa. Keep up with
Thank
her work.
you.
We're just like so excited and honored to have learned from you today and to have gained so much from you tonight. And thank you all for being here and for sharing. I also just want to do a quick thank you to essential workers, to activists, advocates, and all the amazing people out there on the front lines. The Friday Night Salon series was initially an internal Girls Right Now event, and it became public as the pandemic continues to go on. And we saw a need. People need things to do on Friday night. And I'm so glad that you decided to join us on Friday night. You decided to join Arisa, and hope you continue to join us. If you're not familiar with Girls Right Now and you want to know how to be involved, you can go to girlsrightnow.org/give and you can donate to support more programs like this. You can become a Circle member and get special benefits. And you could possibly be a mentee or a mentor in the program. We are a professional mentoring and writing program, the first ever in New York City. So if you want to be involved, you can click on any of those links which are inside the chat. We appreciate anything you can offer in any way you can be involved. You help us stay alive and you help programs like this continue, and we'll always honor that. And then I'll finish up lastly with you can learn more at girlsrightnow.org. You can go to our calendar. Our Friday night salons are always open to the public, but we also have other events like community chats where we bring in West Wing writers, yoga teachers to come and just build community together. A lot of these events are open to you, so stay up to date. And then if you write, if you share the work, if you took a sneak picture of Arisa and you post it on your Instagram, tag us, let us know. We want to retweet, we want to celebrate that with you. Otherwise, thank you all so much for being here. Have a wonderful night, and we'll see you next week.